Colleagues, this bill baffles me. It baffles me not based off of the heart of what people are trying to do. When I hear the arguments about helping those who are sick, helping those who are in poverty, I absolutely agree with that. I agree so much with so many of my colleagues. I mean, I've been spending this session as a vice chair for Chair Kenny Geyer in Human Services. This is one of the most passionate women I know, and we agree that people need help. But what we don't agree on is whether or not government should be micromanaging businesses. So this isn't about the heart of wanting to help people. This, for me, is about the fundamental differences about the role of government. Things that baffle me about this bill. First is the perception of government, and second, that I'll get into in a moment, is our legislative process. The perception of government. I look around here and I think of everything in this room. Your clothes, your ties, your dresses, your desks, every single one of those things is here as a result of some business in Oregon being successful. We could not survive without successful businesses. And yet, I believe it's the role of government to pave the way for businesses to be successful, and then to get out of the way and let them do that. But instead, throughout this session, we've seen a series of government invasion laws that insist on micromanaging our businesses to death. Colleagues, why do we think that our government is better at doing business than our businesses? I don't understand that. Look at our horrible track record. Just recently, millions of dollars spent on a website that never worked. Millions of dollars designing for a bridge plan that was never built. A retirement system that is on the verge of bankrupting our state. And yet, with an additional $1.8 billion in revenue, we say we don't have enough money. Oregonians, I'm sorry, citizens, we overcharged you. Let us keep the money we overcharged. Give us your kicker. Our government demonstrates this day in and day out that we are not good at conducting solid business. Which brings me to the legislative process. I am new to this. Maybe I'll get used to this, but I hope I never do. Why do we insist on passing laws, passing legislation that we know are flawed? Before we send it out, we send things to the Senate and say, and I hope they fix it over there. That's foolish. I don't know a whole lot about this topic, but I sat in the subcommittee on this, and with one reading, I was able to point a whole bunch of flaws in it. Some things are simple, like a family member. They don't count towards your 10 count. Wait a minute. You don't have to give them sick leave, but do they count towards your 10 count of employees? Actually, we're not quite sure. That was the response. We're not sure. Do they count? Well, what about an undue hardship with 1 hour versus 4 hours? If an employer can show that 4 hours is an undue hardship for them to take, or 1 hour, then maybe they can get it bumped to 4 hours. Well, who determines that, and how is it determined? We're not sure. We'll let someone else figure that out later. Other things that aren't so little and so easily fixed, like higher education telling us that this is going to have a $15 million plus cost to them. And we were even unsure on that number because we don't actually know, because we haven't spent the time on that portion of it. Another thing that came up at the last moment was differential pay. Differential pay. This came up, I believe, the last day when we were holding a work session in our Human Services Subcommittee on this. Differential pay, the concept that many of our hospitals, like Asante in Southern Oregon, provide, where employees, part-time employees, can decide, do they want to make 15% more? Do they want to make more money or have benefits? And there's all these employees that have chosen more money over the benefits. And how is this going to affect those employee contracts and how they exist right now? Major things. Again, even other little things, like if someone's on a prevailing wage job, and do they get paid the regular wage or the prevailing wage? 47 different amendments to this bill, and more were being offered at the last moment, which is a clear indication that it is not ready to move on. Yet let's march on forward. Let's just move it. Let's get it there. Let's make our statement. Let's get it through the building, and maybe someday we'll figure it out. That's not what our legislative process should be about. Another thing that came up is that if we really believe that mandatory paid sick leave is that important, and if we believe that government knows best and should micromanage our businesses, then why aren't we doing that? I say prove it. Right now, LFO showed us 1,675 state employees that don't currently have sick leave. Our own employees don't have sick leave. And yet we're going to start out with a mandate for the entire state? Why aren't we starting by leading by example? Why don't we demonstrate, hey, guess what? We'll give it to them and they won't abuse it. We'll give it to them and then watch and record and see, does it actually increase their standard of living? Does it reduce the amount of sickness in the workplace? We could do that. We could lead by example, but that's no longer our model. Our model seems to be, let's step back, pass legislation that we know has holes in it, and let's lead by mandate, and we'll let everybody else take the fallout and figure it out. Colleagues, think this through. I care about people. I love people. I've spent my life, day in and day out, sacrificing to help those in need. But this is not our job. Our government does not need to be micromanaging every little thing that our businesses do. We need to step back and let our businesses thrive. I encourage a no vote.